I thought my wife was cheating on me. Honestly, that was the best case scenario, because the truth I eventually discovered was something I never could have imagined. And when everything finally came out, 3 people ended up getting arrested. My wife Laura and I have been married for 6 years. Up until recently, I thought we had a pretty normal marriage. We both worked full-time, shared bills, and spent weekends visiting family or watching movies together. Nothing dramatic, nothing suspicious, at least, not at first. But about 4 months ago, Laura started acting different. It began with small things. She started bringing her phone everywhere. And I mean everywhere. Kitchen, bathroom, even when she went to take out the trash. If I walked into the room suddenly, she would instantly flip her phone face down. At first, I didn't think much of it. People have privacy. But eventually, the behavior got worse. She started working late more often. Sometimes she wouldn't get home until after 10 p.m. Her explanation was always the same. Work has been crazy lately. And I believed her. Because why wouldn't I? She was my wife. The first suspicion. One night, something strange happened. Laura fell asleep on the couch while we were watching TV. Her phone was sitting on the coffee table, and suddenly I heard a phone vibrating. But it wasn't the one on the table. The sound was coming from her purse. I thought maybe she had left her work phone inside, so I opened the bag. And that's when I saw it. A second phone, a cheap-looking black phone, not one I had ever seen before. My stomach immediately dropped. There are only a few reasons someone hides a second phone, and none of them are good. I wish I could say I respected her privacy, but curiosity completely took over. I turned the phone on. Luckily, it wasn't locked. And what I saw immediately made my heart start racing. There were dozens of messages, but they weren't from one person. They were from multiple numbers. The conversations looked strange. Short messages, almost coded. Things like, "Did he notice anything yet? Not yet. Be patient. We need to wait until everything is signed." Signed? Signed what? I kept scrolling, and then I found the message that made my blood run cold. "Once the insurance policy updates, we can move forward." Insurance policy. My mind immediately jumped to something. 2 weeks earlier, we had updated our life insurance. Laura had actually suggested increasing the amount. At the time, I thought she was just being responsible. Now I wasn't so sure. I continued scrolling through the conversation. Then I saw the message that completely changed everything. It said, "Accidents happen all the time." My hands started shaking. At that moment, a horrible thought entered my mind. What if my wife wasn't cheating? What if she was planning something much worse? I slowly locked the phone and placed it back in her purse. Then I sat on the couch the entire night staring at the wall, thinking, trying to convince myself I was overreacting. But deep down, I knew something was very wrong. The next morning, Laura left for work like nothing had happened. The moment she walked out the door, I called the police. I didn't accuse her of anything. I just explained what I had found. The second phone, the messages, the insurance policy. At first, the officer sounded skeptical, but when I mentioned the phrase, "accidents happen" in the messages, his tone changed immediately. He asked me to come down to the station with the phone if I could get access to it again. So, that night I waited. Laura came home around 9 p.m. She took a shower and went to bed. Once she was asleep, I carefully grabbed the second phone again and drove straight to the police station. I expected them to glance at the messages and send me home. Instead, they took it very seriously. Within minutes, 2 detectives were asking me questions. They copied the entire phone. Then they started tracing the numbers. About an hour later, one of the detectives walked back into the room, and he looked very concerned. He asked me something that caught me completely off guard. "Does your wife know anyone who works in construction or property management?" I said yes. Her cousin owned a small construction company. The detective nodded slowly. Then he told me something that made my stomach twist. One of the numbers texting my wife belonged to that cousin. Over the next week, the police kept me updated. Apparently, the messages weren't just suspicious. They were part of an actual plan. Laura, her cousin, and another person had been discussing ways to stage an accident. They talked about things like car brake failures, gas leaks, construction site accidents, anything that could make a death look unintentional. And the reason? The life insurance policy. If something happened to me, Laura would receive nearly $500,000. 2 weeks later, everything came to a head. The police asked me to act normal while they gathered evidence. Then one morning I got a call. Laura had been arrested. So had her cousin, and another man involved in the messages. Apparently they had been planning the accident within the next month. If I hadn't found that second phone, things could have turned out very differently. I filed for divorce immediately. Laura tried to contact me from jail several times. I never responded. Eventually, I heard through a lawyer that she claimed everything was just a joke. But the messages told a very different story. And now, the case is still moving through court. Sometimes I still think about that night on the couch, the moment I heard that second phone vibrating. If I had ignored it, if I had just gone to bed, I might not be here telling this story. And honestly, that's the scariest part of all.